Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I think we should start our session. Can somebody confirm me I am clearly audible?
Yes, sir.
Muhammad Shah. Okay, thank you, Akas. Let me present my slides. So, yesterday in the first session, we talked about this first part of the agenda, that is introduction to JavaScript. We covered the definition in very detail and talked about all what is needed for someone who is starting into this field or who is learning JavaScript. I covered the aspects that are important and necessary for everyone who claim to be or who is learning JavaScript. We couldn't start introduction to VS Code and the last two bullets of the agenda. So tonight here in this second session, I will be briefly talking about VS Code and then the practical hands-on will be started, right? So this is all we covered in the first session. I'm just going through it. Kindly keep yourself muted. So here we are in, if I move back to our slides. So we are supposed to start from introduction to VS Code, right? And from this point onward, we will be then talking about the runtime environment in JavaScript, and then at the end, I will try to start the essential part, the hands-on of JavaScript as soon I can, because that might take a bit longer. And so let's begin. Introduction to VS Code. What is VS Code? So VS Code stands for Visual Studio. VS means Visual Studio Code, famously known as VS Code, is a free open source text or code editor by Microsoft. ये एक text editor है, right? VS Code is available for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Or although the editor is relatively lightweight, it includes some powerful features that have made VS Code one of the most popular development environment in the recent times. Some people confuse it with IDE, integrated development environment, and that's because it is so rich in features that it can pretty much do a lot of our jobs when it comes to programming. But it is not an IDE. uh, if we look into its definition, it is a code editor, not an IDE. Now, being beginner, and if someone is just starting into this field, they should be aware of the difference between what is an IDE and what is a code editor, right? So here I have the difference elaborated in this slide. So if we talk about IDE, so an IDE is a set of software development tools designed to make coding easier. ठीक है? ये पूरा एक सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट टूल्स का पूरा एक पैकेज होता है जिसमें टेस्टिंग हो सकती है, डिबगिंग हो सकती है, पूरा एक फुल फ्लेज एप्लीकेशन डेवलपमेंट के लिए ये यूज होता है. कोड क्रिएशन होती है, बिल्डिंग, टेस्टिंग, ऑल इज डन इन this in a specific IDE, right? Let me admit this guy. And compiling, debugging, इसका GUI होता है, syntax highlight होती है इसमें, unit testing, code completion. So if we give an example of an IDE, so we have Visual Studio. Visual Studio is not Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio is a full-fledged IDE. It's an integrated development environment, while Visual Studio Code is our code editor. So uh, code editor. Code editor is developer's tool designed to edit the source code of a computer programs. If we talk about code editor or text editor, so by definition, it is just something that can hold our code, right? Incapable of even executing the code, that is fine, that works fine for, that goes well with the definition of a text editor or code editor. But there are code editors which are rich in features, just as Visual Studio Code, and it provides a lot of features. Edit our built-in features. इसमें बहुत features होते हैं embedded. आप कह सकते हैं कि जो हम हमारा notepad है, that can work as a text editor. But फिर हम code editor की बात करते हैं तो इसमें और features आ जाते हैं, such as syntax highlight, printing, multi-view, preview window, and stuff like that. So it is just, a text editor with features into it, which with features embedded into it. So that's where we have Visual Studio Code. And now the difference is, I hope is clear, that Visual Studio is an IDE, but Visual Studio Code is a code editor, right? And if we talk about the interface of Visual Studio Code, it is very well designed for both beginners and professional developers. We have these sections. Activity bar shows us what activities are going on. Editor group shows us the tabs, right, and stuff. And sidebar is also very intuitive and helpful. We can get a lot of help from it. And then we have the status bar, which shows us different status about what is being run and number of lines and stuff like that. Okay, so Visual Studio Code features support for multiple languages. We can code in multiple languages, in programming languages in VS Code. IntelliSense is something that, we type something, and our code editor, our IDE, is intelligent enough to complete and gives us suggestion for that particular what we are writing, right? Cross-platform support. It is cross-platform support. Support is available in VS Code. Lot of extensions are there which help developers in their in the getting their work done easier and in a more optimized manner. Git support is there. Version controlling can be done very easily. And web support, there is full web support available for Visual Studio Code. Hierarchy structure, it's just a structure that anyone can work fine with. Terminal support, we get a terminal in VS Code. Multi projects can be managed simultaneously in VS Code, and commenting obvious for sure is there in VS Code. I'm not going much into detail because I'm saving time for the JavaScript part, because I believe there is there is the part which will take longer, the longest in this session. Now, useful extensions, it depends upon the developer's need, but still the extensions are there are plenty of extensions that developers can use. Some of the useful extensions are mentioned here. I'm not going into detail of each and every extension. It comes with practice. The more you practice, the more, once you get started with one idea, code editor you choose for yourself, right? Then it just come along the way, not an issue. You get to know what extensions are useful for you and what extension you should use, right? Now let's start with JavaScript runtime environment in VS Code. What is runtime environment of JavaScript? Is our concern, and that too in VS Code. So as you all know, we discussed in detail in the first session that JavaScript was once only there for browser, right? We could have just written, we could have just, we were able to write code, JavaScript code only to execute it in our browser. We were having browsers, and these browsers were having a lot of these browsers were having its you can say JavaScript engines, and they were responsible for executing that JavaScript code. But JavaScript was only, there in browser. But then we discussed that when Node.js came into the picture, so how things got changed, and JavaScript is now we can use JavaScript for building backend applications and for server-side programming, right? So that's why we concern JS runtime environment in VS Code. So a bit about what is a runtime environment. So it's nothing. It's very easy to get an idea of what a runtime environment is. Any environment, virtual or on hardware level, which makes us capable of executing our code through that a particular machine can be termed as runtime environment. Let's read through it. The runtime environment is the environment in which a program or application is executed, right? So it was only there in the browser, but with Node.js now we can have this runtime environment on our local machines or on our servers, and it can, just we can use it anywhere. It's the hardware and software infrastructure, hardware and software virtual, and the hardware specification meets together, and it provides a support the running of particular code base in real time, and it provide us the medium in which we can execute our code written in high level language, and it will just then in real time get translated into machine code, and our work will be done, right? So practical. You guys would have heard about Node.js, right? And Node.js can be downloaded from its official website. If I can just, you can type in Node.js, and from here you can download the Node.js recommended for most user. I recommend you to download this one. And once you download it, you can find it in your terminal, right? You have the Node.js available. I have already installed it to save my time. And let's move back to the practical. So this practical or this demo or hands-on is about how can we execute our JavaScript code on our local machine, right? We were able to execute it in the console, but not in our on our local machines before Node.js. Now, how can we make it run or execute on our machines or on a server? If specifically I mentioned that how the server-side programming is done. Okay, so first thing first, what we are supposed to do is that you can simply open up your CMD. Okay, I would just move to desktop, and on desktop, let's create a directory. I would say session 2, and let's move to this folder. And here you need to use npm, not package manager. We're not going into that, but it's a way of starting. It's just the way of starting the development of a Node.js application, right, or a backend application. So, or for server-side programming, what you do, you type in npm init, right, and it just get your work started. You can just give any name. We'll just enter space enter. The entry point will be index JS. Okay, test command. Just keep pressing enter, and now okay, enter and type yes. Okay, so we are done with making. We are done with doing the first step in starting a Node.js application, right? And now, what are we supposed to do? I need a package from npm, which is very handy, and you can then search about it further. But I'm here using it for the demo purpose, so that I do not need to restart or refresh my terminal again and again for executing my JavaScript code. So you would install that is called nodemon, right? Npm install save in developers. It will just save it in there is a folder once you initialize this application. So there comes a folder called package.json, and there all the dependencies you install or the packages you install gets added. Okay, nodemon, let's install it. And I will now open this in my IDE by typing code dot, and my VS Code is being opened, and you can see that I have node modules package.json and package log JSON and package.json. Not going into detail of it. I'm just showing you the demo that how I'm using Node.js for executing my JavaScript code on my machine and not in browser, right? So this is it is all about. We are the session is not about Node.js, but so that's why I'm not going into detail, and that's not our concern for right now. So here we can see this package.json, and all the details are being added here. I will just make a file index.js. JS. Now, how will I execute my code of JavaScript in this terminal, in the terminal of VS Code, and in other words, I can say in my this local machine, right? So I am executing this machine. For that, you will just open the terminal. And as you remember, I installed Node.js. I installed that nodemon package. So what I will do is that I will write a script here. I can say watch and colon. In double quotation, I would just write, I would write node mon and index.js. Who's trying to join? Okay, nobody's here. See, I will just store it, and in index.js here I will come and will write npm run watch, and it will now automatically detect the changes as soon I write something here console.log. I'm writing another statement, and I just write another string. I'm console.logging it, and the moment I save it, you can see that it is being executed automatically, and in a terminal I get another string. So this is the magic of nodemon, and this was the demo that we through Node.js are running now our JavaScript code on this machine on my laptop, right? And with this capability, with this ability, we can with Node.js develop backend applications, and we can do the server side programming and stuff. We can develop APIs, and we can, just integrate databases, SQL, NoSQL. There is a framework called Express.js JS that makes our life easier, and we can pretty much go build full-fledged applications with that. So that's not the matter of this session. So I will be leaving that to some other session. I'm planning, MLSA is planning on that. We will soon come up with sessions that can target Node.js specifically. But okay, let's move back to my slides. And we are done with this practical. If I go further, we are starting with our main thing, which is JavaScript essential training. And if it is visible here, I have written in the light writing, the goal is to be conversant, right? Read and write some JavaScript. We are not here to master JavaScript, and nobody is going to master it in 1.5 hours. It's just, if you want to master JavaScript or any other skill in 2 hours or 3 hours, then you are not serious enough to master or acquire that skill. So to all the beginners, you are having the foundation here. I will be talking about the very basic things, the essentials, the programming fundamentals in JavaScript. The little details will be of high importance, and be attentive, listen to it, and then build upon that. You will have a solid foundation, I promise, at towards the end of this session. But then it's upon you all, if anybody is interested enough to build upon the basics, and can just further acquire the advanced skill set in JavaScript. Okay, what we will be discussing: variables and types, object arrays, and more, operators and control structure, iterating with loops and functions. And by now you would know that uh, why I'm calling it programming fundamentals, because at the start of my first session, I clearly opened this up that the content is being made with a thought, and it is being considered that beginners will be the attendees. And though if someone, a senior JavaScript developers is there out there, or someone with intermediate skill set or skill who's skilled in JavaScript, can still just it will be just a sort of revision for him or her, and it won't bore them, I guess. So let's get to the hands-on. And if I just, let me, it is JS runtime, sorry. In CMD, if I go to this directory, JS runtime, I have my content prepared in this folder. Oops, just sorry. I need to go to desktop. I have my stuff here already included, and I will be doing all the stuff from here. We are starting with from the very start, and the first thing is we have here variables, right? Let me open that single file as well so that I can go in an order. This is all the code I've written today from morning just for the session. Okay, so in index, I have already set that node here, set that up, and we are just ready to execute our code, right? So the first thing first, I will be starting with variable. So I have here a file named variable, and I just need to copy the code and bring it to the index, because the node is just running this file, right? And okay, beginning with variables, the very first thing when we we get into the first semester, and there we study programming fundamentals. So variables are something we encounter the very first. So variables are, in technically speaking, a variable is a memory space. on the RAM when we are making a variable, when we define initialize the variable, what we are doing actually, we are just giving a name to some memory space on the RAM that will be utilized in the real time when we execute our program, right? So it's just, you can visualize it in a way that we have boxes and we are naming those boxes, that boxes are memory spaces, and we then add something into that box, right? So here, in terms of, now we are talking in terms of JavaScript. There are keywords we use for variables when we define it, but even without those keywords, if I just simply I have written x is equal to 4, so this is called assigning a value to a variable. X is our variable and we are assigning 4 into it, and once I save it, I need to run that npm run watch. What's the error? Give me a second. Boy, let me look into it. Just give me a minute. Okay, what if to save time, I just don't go for debugging this error and I just open this variable files, copy it, and the very recent environment that we created, we will just, paste our code here and it should work fine for us, isn't it? So see, we started with variable and you can see I have this x4 stored in x, right? And when I console.log, for console.log, get it as print statement, right? We are printing on console. This is in the web's terminology where the code is being executed is called console. So we are just printing our code there on console, right? So the keyword is console.log, and when we give our variable into it, so it just print 4 for us. You can see here the 4 is written, right? Now there can be the tip for writing or declaring variable is that keep it something that can make sense, right? Because it will make your life easier, as well as the people who reads your code will find it handy for them. So for you can just declare a variable like this, that where am I, so it's the name of variable, and the value here is Peshawar. And now if I save it again, so I will get 4 and Peshawar. So 4 is the first console.log and where am I is the second console log. I'm starting off with the very basic and we will gradually go to the advanced stuff. Now here, if I in ES5, in the ES5 version, we declare variable with the keyword called var, right? We declare it with the keyword var, but in ES6, we also have got now let and const, which are other keywords, but I'm not going into that because I think and I suggest to all who are learning JavaScript, if they learn ES5, they can build upon that, and in a day or two, they can switch to ES6. But that's not a worry. You are pretty much fine if you learn ES5. So this is I'm declaring these variable var person 1 Ali, var person 2 Babar, var person 3 Hina, console.log person 1. So it will console log person 1. This is one way of declaring variable. We can also do declare variables in one line. I have written var for once, and now person one Ali, then put a comma, person two Babar, then put a comma, person three. So these are just two variation of defining declaring variable. And if I run this code, so you can see these are being printed, Peshawar, Ali, and Babar, right? So these were the start of variable. If I go to the file and look what is next for us, so we will be talking further about strings in JavaScript. Now, these are the little things that matter, right? You need to be very careful with all this. And the little things that matter are this. Once you are done here, you should consider practicing these stuff, and solid that will just make it solid, and then you can build upon that. So if I come here in the string, from the string file, I will copy my code here from string and just go to the environment we are running our code at. So talking about strings in JavaScript, so anything enclosed in these quotation marks is called a string. It is a string literal. Specifically, we can call it a string literal. So this is a string. Anything enclosed in quotation is a string. IMSciences, MLSA, these are string, right? Now, what is invalid? You need to either go with double quotation or the single quotation mark, right? So this is valid, but this is not valid. If I just uncomment it, you can see I've started with single quotation mark but ending it with double quotation. So this is not valid. It will just give you an error. Now this is valid, and here a trick. You need to use single quote in your string. So you should start it with double quotation, right? And it will work fine for you all. And this is not valid. Again, let me uncomment it so you can see this is not valid. You're starting with single quote, and then you need to have a single quote within your string, and then at the end you have a single quote, right? So this is not valid. Avoid it. Now this is valid. You can start from single quote and you need double quotation within the string. So just start and end it with single quote. Escaping, you can escape it. Actually, you can just go with the style of using only one style or one type of quotation, either single or double, but you then need to escape it using backslash, right? You just type backslash and this will not be looked by the interpreter, right? So what we are doing is, this is Jawad's session. So here we are using here a single quote, and it is started with single quote and being ended with single quote. So what we do, we just simply escape it with backslash, and this is now a valid string. We can do this, and we can escape here. We are escaping here double quotation. So we have it twice. So we will escape it here as well as to the second double quotation, right? We can break our statement or our string into multiple lines. This is the example. See, if I write it like this, it gives us error. You can do this like this is not valid, right? But how you can achieve it again with backslash. Now this is the right syntax. Okay, this is the second session of JavaScript essential training. So with this backslash, actually it works for us, and you can define multiple line statements are strings, right? And it is very useful when you have a big string. Now we can store our string letter in a variable. I declare a variable my string and store the string literal. This is my string into it. And now the important thing is that string comes with properties and methods or functions, you can say. In JavaScript, when you define a string, built there are built-in properties and methods that can be used with these strings, right? So here's the thing. If I console log my string here, You can see this is my string, right? I am console logging it. This is my string. The value of my string is being printed. Now we can use methods and properties on it. So how would we do that? We will do my string dot, and you can see all these are methods and properties that we can use with string. So the two I have used here are, you can see my string dot length. So it gives us the length of our string. So if I console dot log my string dot length, you can see 17 characters long. Our string literal is counting the spaces into it. So it's very useful when you are building some logic for a problem given, right? There's another my string dot to uppercase, right? So now this will return the uppercase of the given string. So if I just console log this my string dot to uppercase, see, this is intelligence. It gives you suggestions, and I print it. So we get, where's our, okay, console dot to uppercase variable str console dot log. You can see we stored that method which is being applied to our string into another variable, and now once I am console logging it, so we get the string letter in uppercase. The same we can do with lower all lowercase. We have another string here and another see, here I am applying it on a variable, right? I am applying to uppercase on a variable. You can directly apply it on the string letter literal, and you can store it in a variable. You can do it like str2, and it will work fine. If I console log str2, see, this is to local lowercase. So the method is being applied to it, and we got another string, which is a string literal into all lowercase, right? So this was about strings in JavaScript. Now, if I go back to my content and look for what is next, so we get numbers. So from numbers file, I will copy and let come back to in other programming languages, we have float, double, int, and all these data types. But in JavaScript, we have numbers, right? 20, 22, 23, 3, 44, 12.0, 13 point blah blah. All have been has been referred to as numbers in JavaScript, right? Now we have infinity and negative infinity also available in JavaScript for purposes unknown. I haven't used it ever, but if it is ever required, we can use it. Okay, so we can store a number into a variable, right? A number. So it is being stored into it. Focus here. If you are coming from Java and the languages, strongly typed languages, so we are not mentioning any data type here, right? We talked about in the first session that we just need to use the var keyword and a number, and just write console write the you are writing here a number, so it will be dealt as number. If you're defining a string here, writing a string here, it will the this particular variable will be a string. Then there are properties and methods on number as well, and you can pretty much apply that. And there comes a global object. We call it a global object. Global object is something that you explicitly use without attaching it to any other object. So we have this math global object, and it comes with a lot of useful methods and all can be explored. But here I'm writing using this method round. So I'm giving here a number which is this long, and I'm rounding it using this global object math, right? So we can do this. We would define a variable and called round num, and if I console log round num, so you can see we are getting 23. So it's being rounded off to 23. A random, we can generate a random number. Strictly speaking, it is never truly random. We can call it pseudo random, but not that important for now to discuss. We can store it again in some variable random number, and when we console log it random num, we are getting a random number here, right? So this was about numbers, which is a data type in JavaScript. After numbers, here comes booleans, right? So in boolean is all about what is true and what is false. Let me paste it here. So boolean comes with only two values. A boolean can take only two values, that is either true or false, right? And it is very useful in terms of practical application. For example, you are building a web app and there is a button and you want to track or trace its status. So you can define a variable button clicked and define it as false, but as soon somebody click upon it, you can just uh, you would get to know programmatically that the button has been clicked, and using control structure then you can define your procedure or method or what you want to do after the button is being clicked. So applications are there, but for now just get the concept, just get the hands-on on what true and false is and how it is being used. So I have this variable my location shower and my other location Berlin, and I can check the truthness or falseness of this statement. The statement, it is an expression we can now get out of it, that either whether it is true or false. So my location triple quotation triple equal sign, it is called strict equality, and my other location, so it will either return true or false. Let's console.log and let's check it. Wait a minute, we have an error. So we get false. Why false? Because Peshawar is not equal to Berlin, right? Now, this is enough for booleans, but we will be dealing with it in the next exercises coming up. Again, a single equal sign. Remember, we use single equal sign for assignment, variable assignment, but triple or double equal sign or triple equality sign is always used for checking truthness or falseness. So it's about the boolean, if it is double equality or triple equality. But if it's single, so that is for sure it's assignment, right? This is called assignment operator in JavaScript or in programming, and double and this triple in JavaScript is called equality operators, right? We can check equality with this. Okay, now let's move to what's next. The important thing now our discussion objects. So we'll be talking about objects, what objects are and how can we manipulate objects in JavaScript, right? So I'm copying it from here and let's paste it here. So object, delete the not do not delete it actually, but keep in mind that object in other languages are not the same as object in JavaScript. We can very easily define objects in JavaScript and it works differently because it is an object oriented programming language for sure. But again, we talked a little about the nature of object oriented programming in the first session that I mentioned, prototypal inheritance, prototypical, and the object works as a prototype. And I mentioned that everything in JavaScript is an object. It's very interesting to know about it, and I recommend and I suggest that you should look into this concept in further detail, that why JavaScript is called object oriented programming, and you will get a lot of explanation out there. Okay, so in JavaScript, curly braces is our object. Now, this is an empty object, right? This curly braces, which is empty, is our empty object. And I can save the object in a variable with this my empty object, right? And now the way of defining an object is that we start with curly braces and then a key value pair is being used. So we use a label and then a value. And in the middle, after label, we put a colon, right? So this is the general syntax for an object. Now there are two variations. You can either the for label you can go with like this single quotation or quoted, and you can also keep it like this unquoted, right? But it is recommended that you use it quoted because in this style you can accidentally use or write a reserved word of JavaScript, just like var is a reserved word, so var can't be used as a variable or a label or a key, right? Just as far is a true is a keyword, so we can't use it, right? So these are the little things we need to take care of. So label and value, this is one variation and this is the other variation of defining a simple object. Now there can be multiple items in one object. We call it its properties, right? So here it's label 1 and its value like this, and label 2 and its value, and it can go on until we want it to we want our object to be ready, right? Now I'm console logging what my object, and my object is this, right? Let me comment this section for a while. Console logging of, if I save it, I get C label 1 value 1 and label 2 value 2. This is that simple object being printed in the console, right? So this is how we deal our we start or declare a simple object. After this, it can be this long or longer than this, depends upon our requirement. This is another object with name bird, and these are its properties called properties, right? This as a whole defines as an object. So genus, corvus, species, corvus, common name, raven, these are all the keys are the labels and its values. And I can console.log it as a whole like this, console.log bird. And if I save it, you can see all the object is being printed over here. Now we can get a single property of it by using dot notation. So you can see I want the coat and the genus from from these properties of this bird object. So for now, I'm not console logging it, so I won't get anything, right? I need to console log it or store it in a variable. So I can say variable bird coat is equal to bird dot quote. So I am specifically retrieving the quote property of bird object and storing it into this bird quote variable. If I console log it bird quote, and I would just never more. So this is what I have received, the value of quote. You can directly do it console.log and in it bird.genus, for example, and if I console log it, see I got the value of genus. So this is how we get a particular value of our property of a particular object, right? Now, we cannot use double quotation while retrieving. This is invalid. You can see this is not valid. If I uncomment it, we can't use double quotation. You gotta use after dot, you will use you will use the this key as without quotation, right? If you write this will give you an error. Now, there's another variation. You can use um, you can use square brackets, right? And with square brackets, retrieve our properties with this style or fashion as well. So I will console log it per bird, and you just start square brackets, and then now you gotta use double quotation. Don't use double quotation in this fashion, and you write it genus and you store it, console log it. So again, we are getting its value. How to manipulate further an object? So if we talk about that, let me just comment these. Add to the object. We can add something to the object. Like for example, in this bird object here, if you uh, here in the bird object, after deadly, we do not have any thing or property with the name color. So how would we add to it the color property, right? So we can add to it the color property, and that would work fine for us, right? So here what I do is that, let me comment it out, comment it, add to the object, right? So what we do, uncomment the code. Here bird.color is equal to blue. Color is a property which is not already available there. So by this, what would happen that we are adding another property to the already made object. And if I now console.log and the whole object, let's say, so what I should get, I am now getting another property as well with the name, with the label color and value blue. So this is how we add to the object, right? Now we can also delete from the object, and we do that by simply writing the delete keyword and then bird.color. I want the color to being removed from the bird object. So what I do, I simply write the keyword delete and bird.color, and it would work fine. Now again, if I console.log it, so if I print our object again, so I'm not having any color property anymore, right? So this is how we delete it. Now there is something very important that you all the beginners should know. It's called memory referencing, right? What happens actually, what if I want to make a copy of some object? This is my another object beer with the name beer, and what I want to do here, I have written this instruction, which is objects are references to particular location in computer's memory, just as variable. I talked for variable as if when we define a variable, so we are actually naming some memory space with that variable, with the name of that variable, right? So the same goes for objects. Objects are actually locating or pointing towards a particular memory space, right? So now I have this object called beer, right? I want to define another variable with the name beer2, and I'm assigning the already made object to it. So what is actually being happened here? Beer2, beer is being assigned to beer2. So what do you think? Have I just made a copy of this beer object, right? It comes to mind, right, that perhaps we have just made a copy of this beer too. Let's find out. So what I would do is that I will confirm whether I have a copy of beer object in beer2 or not. I am just doing this beer2 dot genus, and I am overwriting it. I am updating it with it is at now. uh, Make it simple. I have B genus as ABC, and here I want it to be changed to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? In the beer, we have genus as ABC, but in the beer 2 genus, it is 1, 2, 3. So if it is a copy, then it shouldn't harm this. In beer, I should have ABC, and in beer 2, the genus should change if it is a copy. Let's see. If now I console log beer 2, you can see in genus I have 1, 2, 3, right? What about beer? I should have ABC there, right? Console.log beer, only beer, the first object where we have the genus as ABC. So if I save it, you can see that I still have 1, 2, 3, and it's not being changed, right? So what does it imply? It implies that we are not making a copy of beer, right? When we write such a line that we assign an already made object to another variable, so what we do actually, we are just telling the second variable that point to the memory space which this beer object is pointing to. So this is a scenario where the memory space is 1 and beer as well as beer 2 is pointing to that particular memory space. So when I change something through this variable, so the memory space is 1, right, for beer and beer 2. So automatically it will be changed for beer as well. So hence, now we know that we are not making a copy when we write such a line. Rather, we just assign another variable to the same memory location which the beer object is pointing to. So this was important about objects, and the basics of objects are now cleared. Now, if I just move back to my content and see what is next. So I think we have arrays next, and here start the arrays. Let me open where I have, I think, mm, Okay, copy index. See, so in arrays, arrays is very important, and do know that arrays are also objects, but with special treatment. It is being treated differently, but in its roots, it is an array is an object. We define array with square brackets, not like object in while we object in objects we define objects with curly braces, but arrays are defined with uh, square brackets. This is an empty array assigned to a variable. Now this is another array, and in array we can store multiple values. It is just a list of data that preserves their order, right? It's an ordered list actually. And do know that in JavaScript, array can contain any sort of data. It can contain Boolean, number, even object, even another array. So it can contain anything. Now, this days of week would print us this array, right? So if I console.log days of week, so I get here the array Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, right? This is this array. Now, no keys displayed, only values. There are keys assigned to it, which we call indices, index, right? This there the indexes are there, but we do not write just we do like we do in objects. In objects, we assign a key, a label to what is coming what is following which where we use the value. We give a label, and then we write the value for that label. But in arrays we use index, and we do not need to write that, and it's being taken care of automatically. No keys displayed, only values secretly. Array is an object. It gets special treatment unlike other languages, right? So arrays can contain any type of data. As you can see, this is an array with the name my array, right? If I store it in a variable var my array, it is containing numbers, strings, and also Boolean, and it will print it as this is, right? If I console.log my array and I see, I get 1, 2, 3, string 2, string 1, true and false. So it can contain anything in JavaScript. Do know that. Array can contain object and arrays. We can also see this is an object with name as property, with role as property. See, label and its value, label and its value. Then after the object, we are defining another array into it, and after array we are defining a Boolean and then a string. So see how elastic and how flexible arrays are in JavaScript and can be used for multiple purposes. There comes methods and properties with arrays just as it comes with strings, right? So we can find the length of an array with this. I'm not going further into it. I need to get faster a bit. Okay. Now we have places, another array, Peshawar, Madan, Islamabad, Karachi, Lahore. This is an array. Now, what if we want to access the first element in this array? So we use this index, right? 0 and 3. If I just console.log and I print places, this is how we retrieve it. We do not use dot notation here like objects, right? Do remember that. And this in the square bracket, what we type the index of a particular element. Remember, it starts with 0. The first element will get 0, and so on and so forth. It will go until our array is being ended. Okay, places, and now 0. If I print it, I should get Peshawar as a result, right? Because it is the first index. Okay, we can get the same way 3. We can change. I want the 0, 1, 2. I want this Islamabad change to Tarbela. So if now I just print, see, this is being done at here. Now here, if I console.log places. So I should get the changed one and see in Peshawar, Madan, Tarbela, Karachi, Lahore. So instead of Islamabad, I'm getting Tarbela because I have changed it to Tarbela. Now, what we can do is, what if I want to add something to the last of the array? These are simple operations that I'm elaborating here for the purpose that concept of arrays would get more cleared. So there are multiple ways of doing that. Adding something to the last of an array. You use the property places.length, so it will return the for example, we have 5 elements, so it will return 5. Now places and places.length, this is giving us 5 places, square brackets, and within these square brackets we have 5, and we are assigning it Berlin, right? So what we are doing is we are assigning something to the last of an array. And now if I print it here, so we would have Berlin added to our array, right? There's another way of adding something to the last of an array using the push method, right? And you just type in, see, this was the one way of adding something to the last of an array. I console.log, let's test it, and places. Now if I run it, you can see Berlin is being added to it. Now I can use the push method, and with push I can also add something to the last of an array. So I would just print it again, and if I see New York is added to it after Berlin, right? Now how to remove the last element? You just use the pop and it will do its work. It will pop out the last element. And now after this, if I console log my array, so you can see that New York is no longer here. You can see here in the last line, New York is being removed, right? Now, adding to the start of an array, we can use the shift method to add something to the start of an array. We can unshift it. We can remove it from the start of an array. How to delete something from an array, right? I want to delete. What if I use delete keyword just as we used it in the objects, right? So if I use delete keyword in for arrays, so let's see how it react. I'm deleting the third element, the third index, right? Which becomes the 4 element in the array if we count it. Now, if I console.log it, places, and you can see we get something like empty item. It's been not removed. The size is still the same as before the deletion. So it is not actual deletion. It just removed that value, but the space remains empty in that array, and the length is not being disturbed in any way. So now how to actually delete the element? We can do that by using splice method. We give two things. We write it to, we give the index and how many values we want to be deleted permanently. So I want one value after second index. So with this, we can actually delete the space as well as the value into it, right? And the size would shrink in that way. So now if I console.log places, and you can see the second element is now being deleted, but since I haven't done any deletion to the empty item, so it's still there. But you can see the size of the array is being shrinked, and what there was at the second the second was being deleted. So this is how we use splice for actual deletion and delete for just deleting the value from the array, and we want the space to be there. So these were the basics of arrays in JavaScript. Now let's see what is next. White spaces. Let me just read it here because it is not having any execution. So white spaces is something without our code, right? See here, after year, the empty space is termed as white space. After equality assignments operator, the empty space is white space. See, now why is white space a matter to us? Not readable. This line, just look at this line, how jumbling it is, and it's not very readable. So we use white spaces for readability. Now see, this is more readable than the first one, which without white spaces. We can do something like this, right? Year, and after year one white space, then after assignment operator one white space. So see, now this is more readable. We can align the assignment operators. So see, this adds up to the readability of ours. If I So this was about white spaces. The same we can do with objects. So comments, always use comments, right? Single line comment and multiple line comment. We can do single line comment by double slash, right? This is a comment. And we can use block comment or multiple line comment by uh, single slash and steric, and then steric and slash, and between it, whatever you write will be multiple line comment. Now comes the operators and control structure. Very important. I won't take just, I will try to wind this up. We are left with only 2 to 3 major topics. So it's just, getting done. I am just looking at the clock, and accordingly, I will speed up if I need to. Okay, so in arithmetic operators, see, we get these operators 3 plus 5 we can use. This is used for division, this is subtraction, this is what we call multiplication, the steric sign. Comparison operator, what is meant by comparison operator? As we use it before, this 3 equality signs, strict equality operator, this is called strict equality operator, and 1 exclamation sign, and these two are called strict inequality, right? Now what for double? So double is called only just equality operator, and this is inequality operator, and it return us true or false, right? We can also use these operator that one is less than 2, or one is greater than 2, one is greater than or equal to 2. So see, these can be used in different contexts, and it will return us either true or false, right? This is not valid. Why this is not valid? Because this thing in ES6 we have a definition for it. It's arrow function, right? So when we want to say that 1 is greater than or equal to 2, so we first write the greater sign and then the equal sign, and this would work fine, and it's now valid for us, right? Modulus operator, what modulus operator does, it will multiply 20 by 3, and the remainder is the answer of this expression, right? So modulus operator returns us the remainder of an operation. Now incrementing and incrementing, we have a variable count, and we want to increment it, so we can write count is equal to count plus 1. So this is one way of incrementing a variable. This is another variation. We type count plus equal to 1. It will work fine. We can just use double plus signs, plus operator, so it will work fine. Now for the same goes for subtraction. So this way we increment or decrement certain variable. Variable string cat plus dog. It can plus sign can also be used as concatenation operator when it is being used with something as string literal. So in this case, it is working as a concatenation operator. Now logical operator, comparison on more than one things. When we want to ask more than one question, so then we use logical operators. This is and logical, this is or logical, right? We have 3 variables. Animal 1 is monkey, animal 2 is bear, animal 3 is tiger. Animal 1 refers to monkey. Now we are asking some questions and returning our result into animal 1. We write, is animal 1 equal to monkey and animal 2 equal to bear. So if this is true, animal 1 is monkey and animal 2 is monkey. If both are true, only then the whole expression will be true. If one of it is false, then it will be false completely, because we are using AND operator. Again, here you can see we are using animal 1 is app and animal 2 is bear, so it will return us false. Very intuitive. Okay, let's come to this one, and this will expand further. Animal 1 equal monkey, or animal 2 equal monkey, and animal 3 equal tiger, sorry. So see, in this, if either is true, if animal 1 is monkey or animal 2 is monkey, it will return as true, or true. Okay, if both are false, then it will be false. Perhaps suppose it is this part returns as true, so 1 is true, then and then animal 3, it will look for animal 3. If it is tiger, then the whole statement will be termed as true, else it will be false. Now coming to control structure, very important. Control structures are to modify the flow of execution. We want our program to behave differently based on different condition. So when, suppose I will just do this thing in our console to make it clear, and after this we are almost done. Copy. I will come here and will open another tab, come to inspect, and here in the console I just come to console and paste my code. We can run our code in browser, right? Known to all. Now, here I am using, why I'm using browser? Because I'm using an object of a browser, window.conform. Don't bother about it. My concern is just here to explain about how the control structure works. So here, once it is being executed, so what it's doing, click OK, so get true, click cancel, get false. So once I just execute it, so what will happen? Where's this? Okay, here. See, it says click OK, get true, click cancel, get false, and I'm storing it in answer variable. So if I click yes, cancel, so what happened is in answer variable, if now I write answer, so see, it is returning false. But again, if I just run it again, so see, if I click OK, so it is returning true. So this is how on different behaviors, on different condition, we can have different results, right? This is how we use control structure. Okay, where I was here. So this is how if statements are used. Now, there is in if statement, what if there is what if some condition is true? If a condition is true, just it will return the true, the true part. But if a condition is false, it will return us the else part. So we haven't yet used the else part, so let's use that as well. So if I just uncomment this part which I already copied, and see, I am writing if answer becomes equal to true, so console.log you say true. Now this is just doing the if part. I want to have a statement or a procedure or a program or some code written for both the cases. If it is true, you say true. Else, in else part, we write when a certain expression is false, right? So when it is false, it will return us you said something else. So if I just run it again and I say okay, so you can see you said true. But if I just execute it again and put type cancel, so you see I clicked cancel and it returned you said something else. So this is how we use if and else. Now here we can also use multiple cases like this. Just focus here. I want more than two conditions, so I say if answer is yes, you said true. If else f else f, if answer is maybe, say this, do this. Else if another condition answer is no, do this. So we can do as much we can embed as much conditions into it as needed, right? Now there is another alternative called switch statements. It works just the same, but the syntax is different. Now look at this part. This is if f, right? In f answer is yes, you said true. If else if answer is maybe, you said this. Else if no, you said no. Else you rebel you. The alternative way of writing the same code with switch statement is write switch keyword and write the variable you want to evaluate, right? The decision is being made based on this variable. So here we have answer. Now we define cases. Case one is yes, so it will console log something, and then we break that case. It's very important. If we do not break it, then it will go further. Now second case is maybe, right? Then third case is no. Then at the last we can the way we use else statement here, in the last we can use default in switch statement. So in default we can console.log you rebel you. So this is how we use switch statements, right? Now there are ways of writing it in a manner there is a bit different and perhaps not much readable, but professional programmers do it. We write variable today and it's Friday, right? This is one way of writing this whole bunch of code. Today is Friday, console.log JavaScript essential training day 2, else session is not today. Now the same thing can be written this way. We just write if equal to Friday, console.log. We are not using curly braces and anything like that. And after the if statement and its program and its code, we can just write the else right after it. And this part of code and this part of code works the same. This is how we can write ters ifs. Ters ifs means it's shorter. You can see it's much shorter than the first one. So this is how. Now the third very important advanced topic is ternary operators. Ternary operator is nothing but a way of writing if else. So you can see I have a variable today, Friday, and I say today becomes equal to Friday. So now it will be either true or false. So I write this question mark, and after this some line of code, and then this colon and some line of code. This will be dealt as part after if, and this will be dealt as the second line. This after colon will be dealt as part after else. So if this is true, so this part will be executed, and if it is false, this part will be executed. This way of writing it called ternary operator, when we use colon and this question mark. Now the second last topic we have here, I would just take only 15 minutes further, and just we are covering the last left two topics, and which are also very important. Loops. So we have different types of loops. For loop is the first one. Why loop is used? What is loop? Loop is used for iteration, when we want things to be repeated again and again, right? So doing something over and over again. One type of, we call it loop in programming. So one type of loop is called for loop. What it does, for var I is equal to 0, it when we define for loop, we give it three things, where var, then the condition, and the third what how we want it to go further. So see, var I is equal to 0. This is the initialization. We want our iterations to start from here, and it should go until here, and in this manner. So if I print this, so I will get 0 to 9, right? If I just copy it and paste it here, and I print it, you can see I get 0 to 9. So this is how for loop works, right? Now, after for loop, we do have how we use common use is looping over the content of an array. In multiple cases, we use loops differently, but one common use is that we use it for iterating over some array, right? So we have home, about us, contact us, and we want to iterate through it. So what we do, we just simply define a for loop I. We started from 0 and we go until the last element in the array. What we have written, I is less than page numbers, which is the name of our array, dot length, and then I plus plus. So it will console.log page number and see page number and square brackets. So it is referring to each element in the array. This I will be first 0, then in second iteration it will be 1, then 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And I can use a condition and it can go as complex as you want it to. So here if is used, if page number I becomes equal to JavaScript playground, I want it to just console this line once it is used this element JavaScript playground, right? So if I just execute it, so I will get home, about us, contact us. When it is reached JavaScript playground, it will console log we have reached JavaScript playground. Then after that it will print news and blog, and the loop will be terminated. There is another type of for loop called enumerative loop, and we use the syntax is only different. We just use it like this. We use the in keyword variable p. So this is that iterator, right? It will just iterate through element. It will first home, then about us, in page number. It's simpler and more readable. Var p in page numbers console.log p. So it p is 0 1 2 3 4, right, and 5 6 so on, and page number, and then in square brackets the p. So this is referring to the value of the index 0. At 0 we have home, then about us. So this is how for in loop works, and the syntax of for in loop. In while loop is just the same as for loop. Whatever we do with for loop can be achieved with while loop, but in while loop we give a condition, right? And it is used when we are not known that when are we going to encounter the condition, right? When are we are supposed to stop our iteration. So this is this is in for, and the same when we write in while. So in while we define a variable, this is the starting position. We write while I is less than 0. See, while I, sorry, not 0, why I is not less than 9, and we console.log I. So this I would be incremented after each iteration. It will just print 0, then I will be 1, it will print 1, then I would become 2, and it will print 2. And this way while loop would work. Why use while? You can when you don't know after how many iterations you may encounter an endpoint, so that's the time when we use while loop. Now this is another example. I'm skipping over here because I need to cover further. See, this was wire. Now the last portion of this session is functions. It's simple in the start. I'm keeping it basic again, but very important. So function, a way of packaging up lines of code into one unit, name, invoke, and maintain separately. Basic function. Why we need functions, right? So when we have a bunch of code and we want to just execute it again and again, so rather writing that code again and again, we can package that up in some function, and that function can do the job for us. For example, these are lines about today. So if I want to control log it for Hello, sorry for the interruption. I got disconnected. So we were at the last of the last topic, which is functions. So I was talking that why we use functions. So when we need to do some extensive work and again, so better is to make a function of that, and then using that function we can easily get done with our work. So these lines of code, if I want to console log it for perhaps 10 times, so I shouldn't have need to just write it for 10 times the full lines. Instead, I can write a function is a keyword, then the name of function, right, and enclose these 4 lines into it. And now for how many times I want it, I can do it. About today, for how many times, I just need to copy it, right, and I'm copying it and it will just work fine. Okay, so here, printing 1 2000. See how extensive this task is. If somehow somewhere we need to print 1 2000, this is how we will console log it. This is stupid, right? So this is another use a for loop for printing 1 2000, right? And this is another smart approach that I have defined a function with the word with the keyword function 1 2000, and in it I have just enclosed the for loop, right? And now for any times I just just write this 1000, it will console log this 1 2000 lines for me, right? So if I say yes, you can see here I have used arguments, and in arguments you can just give a parameter to it. So function 1 to limit is the name of function. I am giving here a limit, right? And I say I am defining a for loop into it. It's starting from 1 and it will go until this limit, right? Which will be assigned to it while invoking plus 1. It will go until that point and it will increment and console.log. So now I can use this 1 to limit, and whatever I type here, it will go till there. So if I type here, for example, 800, and I just invoke it, so it will go until 800, right? Another basic use of function is that I have defined a function with name is even. So it's taking something called num, so which is a parameter, and here is my logic for knowing whether this given number is even or odd, right? So I say num modulus 2. What I talked about modulus, that modulus gives us the remainder after division. So num would be divided by 2, and if the remainder is equal to 0, so I need to console.log num is an even number, else console.log num is not an even number, right? So this is how is even works. So here I'm writing here 7, so 7 is not an even number. 7 is not an even number, right? If I write 10, so it will now give me 10 is an even number. So this is how the basics of function work. These are very basics. In ES6 we use the arrow function and more advanced stuff, but since it was all about essentials, so I think this should suffice, and we are also ended with our time for the session. So I will just briefly move back to my slides, and here you can see with hands-on, we have talked in detail about variables and types, object arrays and mores, operators and control structure, iterating with loops, function, and stuff like that. Last thing, what I want to tell that I see that the attendees count has been gone down, and I get that because not more people are into, perhaps they were knowing the basics already. So still the point is that it's not a matter to me. The present attendees are here 5, 6, or how much the count is. I'm good with that, and I would be happy if I just conveyed the lesson in some way. There are always room for improvement for speakers and for instructors also. So see, we covered about variables and types, object and arrays, and more operators and control structures, iterating with loops and functions. But it's not the end. This was the start of JavaScript. I was just trying to the whole purpose of these two-day session was to make you understand of the key concepts in JavaScript, and then you should have the start into this language, and it's very you can go very advanced in it, and it's a very rewarding language. So hands-on is done. What are my recommendation? That if you are done with what I have done in this session, the basics, the essentials. You should further see for asynchronous code, promises, async and await. What are these concepts? What do practice it after learning it from the resources I will be now suggesting, and also you can search YouTube, and there are quality channels who instructors are quite proficient in JavaScript. Object-oriented JavaScript, strong versus loose typing. Do look into these topics as well, right? These are the resources. Most of these, the first 5 bullets are books. And if you want to really master the language, and you need to look into these books and start reading these books with along with practicing, and it will just give you the space or the role you want in JavaScript's world, right? The last one is Mozilla network docs documentation, which is very handy and very useful. You can check that out, and I suggest you to check that out as well. So I would ask if there are any questions. I just I try to cover it up. I was about to include this concept in my content as well, but there is limit. You can see after about 2 hours, we have the attendees number down to only 7 to 8. So if I would have added this, so what would be the case? And it's still not practical. Obviously it's not practical, but MLSA IMSciences try to arrange more sessions, and would try to plan such sessions which can that attendees could benefit from that. The theme of these 2 day session was to give the beginners a touch to the JavaScript, so they should know what JavaScript is and how they can go further into this language. So for questions, I am back here to my MS Teams. If there are any questions, you can unmute your mic and ask right away, and then with last words, I will wind up this session. Do we have any questions?
सर
जी
मेरा
समाम
सर
जी
सुमामा यान सर मेरा क्वेश्चन है कि मैंने HTML और CSS सीखा है ऑलरेडी और वेब
जी
डेवलपमेंट करना चाहता हूँ, तो आप रोड मैप डिस्कस कर लेंगे थोड़ा सा
हाँ अच्छा,
वेब
ग्रुप में
डेवलपमेंट के
आपने
लिए।
मैसेज किया था?
जी मैंने भी किया था और एक बंदा कोई और था उसने भी किया था।
अच्छा समामा, एक्चुअली टुडे यू कैन सी, अगर मैं आपको ये फाइल दिखा सकूं, तो मैं इसमें बिजी था. यू कैन सी इट्स कमिंग टू 754 लाइंस ऑफ कोड. सो आई टुक दिस टुक माय टाइम. तो मेरा वो जहन में था, लेकिन आई कुडंट लुक्ड इनटू दैट. तो आई वुड से कि ग्रुप इज देयर, मैं देख लूंगा, और इंशाल्लाह फिर मैं आपसे वो शेयर कर लूंगा. ठीक है?
ठीक है सर, मेरा मतलब ये था कि मैंने HTML और CSS सीखा है, अब मैं PHP में जंप करूँ कि जावास्क्रिप्ट में जंप करूँ, बस ये
सी
बता दें पहले।
बात ऐसी है ना कि आपको डोम मैनिपुलेशन, वेनिला जावास्क्रिप्ट, अभी ये जावास्क्रिप्ट में मैंने जो कॉन्सेप्ट्स दे दिए, इस पर प्रैक्टिस करें. आई वुड सजेस्ट स्टार्ट इससे करें,
जी
आपको रोड मैप भी मिल जाएगा. आप
जी
डोम मैनिपुलेशन सीखें कि हम बेसिक जो इंटीग्रेशन होता है जावास्क्रिप्ट का, वो किस तरह اپنے HTML CSS کے ساتھ کر سکتے ہیں, کس طرح ہم انٹریکٹیوٹی لاتے ہیں اپنے ویب ایپس میں, ٹھیک ہے. تو ڈوم مینیپولیشن کو ضرور دیکھیں, اور ڈوم مینیپولیشن کے بعد آپ پھر آئی ووڈ ٹیل یو ٹو اسٹک ٹو دا فرنٹ اینڈ ان دا اسٹارٹ. صرف فرنٹ اینڈ میں کام کرے, CSS HTML اور جاوا اسکرپٹ میں اپنے پورٹ فولیو پروجیکٹس بنائے, ٹھیک ہے. خود سے آپ ٹیوٹوریلس کاپی کر سکتے ہیں, لیکن پھر اس میں آپ کا پرپز یہ ہونا چاہیے کہ آپ کو وہ آتا ہو خود. جو آپ کاپی کر بھی رہے ہو تو اس کی سمجھ آپ کو آتی ہو. تو یہ ایک سجیشن ہے. پھر اس کے بعد if you see کہ آپ پروفیشنٹ ہو گئے ہو فرنٹ اینڈ میں, آپ ایک جونیئر فرنٹ اینڈ پوزیشن کو آپ ہنٹ کر سکتے ہو, پھر آپ جو ہے کسی اسٹیک کو ٹارگیٹ کر سکتے ہو. من اسٹیک ہے, مین اسٹیک ہے. پھر آپ PHP کو بھی ایکسپلور کر سکتے ہو, لاراویل فریم ورک جو ہے. تو تھنگز آر دیئر دین, بٹ یو شوڈ اسٹارٹ فرام فرنٹ اینڈ اینڈ اسٹک ٹو اٹ فار اے وائل, ٹھیک ہے.
ٹھیک ہے سر, تھینک یو.
جی, any other question from anyone? Okay, so if there are no questions, I would say being the instructor of this session, I tried to touch what I thought is important. In the last toward the last of the session, I was watching to the clock, and I thought that it's now getting a bit out of hand, not because of the content, but because it's just, we decided it will go for 1.5 hours. But see, when you are here to learn, when you are after learning something, so it's always best to sacrifice a bit. And I hope who were here till the end. Here I can see Samama, Ahmad, Lishpa, Khurshid, Saeed Anfal, Ihtisham, Mariam. So I guess I wouldn't have disappointed you on the content I brought. I kept it simple. As I said, میں اس میں یہ advanced topics بھی last میں ایڈ کر سکتا تھا. اور اس کے علاوہ جو لاسٹ میں میں نے جو لوپس کے بارے میں پڑھایا, جو کنٹرول سٹرکچرز کے بارے میں کہا, آپریٹرز کے بارے میں کہا, اس پر میں الگ سے 1 گھنٹہ لے سکتا تھا, کیونکہ اس کو میں جتنا چاہتا تھا ایکسپلین کر سکتا تھا, لیکن ٹائم کی وجہ سے میں نے اس کو ٹرائی ٹو جسٹ وائنڈ دس اپ in a bit of rush. لیکن یہ جو سلائڈز ہے یہ بھی آپ کے ساتھ شیئر ہوگی. اس کے علاوہ میں جو ہے وہ گروپ بھی ابھی اوپن ہے, اٹس ناٹ گوئنگ اینی ویئر. تو یہ آپ دیکھ سکتے ہیں, آپ کویشچنس پوچھ سکتے ہیں, آپ آئی ایم آلویز اوپن ٹو ڈسکشن. مائی DM would be open and we can discuss upon if anything is there you think جو کہ مجھے ایکسپلین کرنا چاہیے تھا فردر, لیکن میں ایکسپلین نہیں کر پایا. اس کے علاوہ جو میں نے سماما کو کہا کہ ڈوم مینیپولیشن ہے, اس پر الگ سے ایک سیشن ہو سکتا ہے کہ اگر ہم ویب ڈیولپمنٹ کو ٹارگیٹ کریں ڈوم مینیپولیشن کے بعد, پھر ہم جو ہے Node.js کو بھی ٹارگیٹ کر سکتے ہیں, ٹھیک ہے. اور بھی بہت سے ایونٹ جو ہیں وہ ہم آرگنائز کر سکتے ہیں. Now this was from MLSA IMSciences, جو کہ ایک کمیونٹی ہے, ٹھیک ہے. اور جو گروپ بنا ہے میں ادھر بتا دوں گا if you guys are willing enough. تو آپ میں ایک MLSA کمیونٹی کا گروپ بنا کر آپ اس میں ایڈ ہو سکتے ہو, اور پھر آگے جو بھی ہم ایونٹ پلان کریں گے جس میں ہم اور اسپیکرس کو بھی انوائٹ کر سکتے ہیں, تو ان کا آپ کو سب سے پہلے پتہ چلے گا اور ان سے اس سے آپ بینیفٹ لے سکتے ہیں. لاسٹ تھنگ in the group, I will be sharing these 3 things which let me show you. تو جو آپ یہاں پر موجود ہے ان سے, اور جو ادھر گروپ میں اویلیبل ہے جنہوں نے پہلے سے لیو کر لیا, اینڈ آئی گیٹ دیم, کیونکہ اتنا بیٹھنا آسان نہیں ہے, تو جو بیٹھے ہیں ان کو میں اپریشیٹ کرتا ہوں. LinkedIn, I will share my LinkedIn, you can connect there. I will share my Twitter, we can connect there. And there is a feedback form for the 2 days, the session, the first session and the second session combined. And I will be happy if you fill that out, because it's, as a community, this feedback is necessary for us, and we all are strugglers, and we all are sort of building our careers, so we all need feedbacks. It can be positive criticism and whatever, anything should reach to us. So feedback is important, and I would request you all and people in the group to to give it a minute. It will take hardly a minute and fill this form and give MLSA Sciences your precious feedback, right? And here you can connect. So I will shortly sharing these link in the group, and I think we are done for the session. And rest anything if there's important you can ask in the group, and I can also interact and talk anything I want to in the WhatsApp group, right? So if there's no question, we can wind the session up. Let me stop the recording.